First step is to flip the laptop upside down. Next step is to locate the battery release mechanism on the underside of the laptop. Push the battery release mechanism to one side to pop the battery open. Please remove the battery from the laptop and set aside. After removing the battery, go ahead and skip the prerequisite number 2 for removing the optical drive as noted in your instructions. Alright, the next step is to flip the laptop right side up, open the lid on the laptop, and press and hold the power key for 5 seconds to discharge any residual electricity in the unit. Take your pry tool and starting in one of the corners of the keyboard, gently pry the keyboard up. Avoid hitting the screen with your pry tool and use your other hand to keep tension on the lifted up part of the keyboard. Work your way across the keyboard, gently prying up the keyboard tabs that lock the keyboard in place. Once all the tabs on the top have been dislodged, gently pull the keyboard away to remove the lower tabs from the unit. Now go ahead and flip the keyboard upside down onto the palm rest. Locate the black tab locking mechanism for the keyboard's ribbon cable and gently use your fingernail or the pry tool to flip that black tab in the vertical position. Once you've done that, then go ahead and remove the keyboard's ribbon cable gently from its connector. Now go ahead and set the keyboard aside. After removing the keyboard, remove the 5 screws on the silver plate above the palm rest assembly. Take care after removing the first screw or each screw that you've got the screw is attached to the magnetic tip of the screwdriver before removing it fully from the case. Set the screw on your piece of paper where you're going to be locating all of the screws after removal. Tape your screws to your piece of paper where you've designated the location that the screws belong to. After removing the screws, locate the optical drive ribbon cable and the black tab locking mechanism that holds the cable in place. Gently flip the black tab locking mechanism up with your fingertip or the pry tool and gently remove the ribbon cable from its connector. After removing the 5 screws, go ahead and close the lid on the laptop, flip your unit over, and you're going to be removing the 9 screws that secure the base cover of the unit, including the large silver screw that is in the battery compartment. Black screws, you'll also be removing the silver screw from the battery compartment. Place this screw with the other 9 black screws on your pre-labeled paper, securing them with a piece of tape. After removing the 9 base cover screws and the 1 battery compartment screw, we're going to return now to the prerequisite number 2 in removing the optical drive assembly. First thing to do is to remove the infinitesimally small screw that secures the optical drive to the system unit. Take a look at how small that screw is. I don't have to tell you, you have to be very careful and make sure not to drop this screw. We're going to recommend that you use a piece of tape and secure the screw to the tape first before removing it away from the laptop to avoid losing it under a table or some such thing. Next thing to do is grab your pry tool, and you're going to be putting it in the slot where the optical drive, silver optical drive chassis appears. What you want to do is use a fair bit of pressure against that metal chassis of the optical drive. Try not to put any pressure on the plastic of the unit itself, but you'll hear that optical drive eject. You'll see it pop out of its slot. Now it's easy to remove it from the unit. After removing the optical drive, then that will reveal 3 small screws that you also need to remove at this time. Go ahead and remove those screws and secure them to your sheet of paper with the tape as demonstrated. After removing the optical drive screws, please raise your red flag and be patient. Someone will come around to start the back cover removal process for you. Once we've started that removal process for you, gently slide your pry tool along the unit and gently lift the locking tabs away from the chassis. Remove the back cover from the unit. After removal of the back cover, let's take a look at the system unit for a second. You got your coin cell battery there. We've got the memory stick, which we'll deal with in a moment. And we've got the heat sink and the CPU. Notice that the CPU is screwed down with 4 screws, and it's actually soldered. So this is not an FRU, not a field replaceable unit. However, the entire motherboard is a field replaceable unit, should you need to. You want to take a lot of care when working inside here. If you drop or scratch anything on that system board, game over. Let's start with the wire. Let's go to the wireless NIC next. You see that there with the little cables, the antenna wires that are coming off of it. Got the hard drive over there. That is also pretty easily removable. We won't be doing that in this lab. And then we've got an I/O board finally over on this side. So the purpose of this lab is actually to remove the memory module. So we want to locate the 2 silver locking arms that hold the memory module in place. You want to gently pry those arms away and let the memory module gently lift up. Once you do, now we're going to gently remove the memory module at its angle. Don't try to bend it up and remove it vertically. Just remove it gently away from its connector. After removal of the old memory module, grab your new memory module and note the location of the notch on the memory module. Note that the memory chips themselves may not be on the same side as you previously had. But what's important is that the notches line up between the memory module and the connector. Gently insert the memory module into the black connector until the edge, the gold edge connector, is inside the black connector of the memory unit. Now you're going to gently press down on the memory module until the locking arms snap into place. Okay, we're now ready to reassemble the back cover on the system unit. And what we're going to do is we need to get the optical drive ribbon cable inserted through its appropriate slot. Now this is the slot right next to the hard drive, nearest the hard drive. So in order to make this happen, we want to separate the chassis from, we want to pry open the unit so that we separate the chassis from its screen. And you can probably just see the slot now that was there. Grab your back panel unit and insert your optical drive ribbon cable through that slot and gently rest the back panel on the chassis. Now go ahead and gently close your laptop, and we're almost ready to press down now and secure the back panel. You'll hear it snap into place as the tabs lock into their appropriate places. Alright, after the back panel has been snapped into place, we're going to start by inserting the 3 little optical drive screws. And now we're ready to start inserting the back panel screws. Alright, we're now ready to assemble the back cover with the 9 black screws. So you'll start at one corner and work your way around. We also want to insert the silver screw in the battery compartment at this point. And let's make sure that we do not insert the little optical drive screw yet. We're not quite ready for that. Okay, we're now ready to flip the laptop right side up. Open up the clamshell, and we're going to be reinserting the 5 screws that go onto the silver chassis. At this point, we're going to be reinserting the ribbon cable for the optical drive. Notice the black line on the ribbon cable's connector. You want to insert the ribbon cable gently into the connector in the chassis. Make sure that the black line for that ribbon cable lines up with the black tab once you've pressed the black tab locking mechanism down. That black line on the ribbon cable should align with that black locking mechanism tab at this point. Alright, at this point we're going to be replacing the keyboard. Take your keyboard, place it upside down on your palm rest, and then you're going to lift it up. The first thing we have to do is connect the keyboard's ribbon cable to its connector. Now, note the white line that is on the ribbon cable, the edge of the ribbon cable. That white line is going to need to line up inside the connector when we're done. So this is going to be tricky, gang, and what you need to do is you need to slide the edge of that ribbon cable underneath the 2 plastic tabs that are on the connector. Once you do, that ribbon cable will insert fairly far into the connector, and that white line should be at the very edge of the connector. You'll know that you've inserted the cable correctly when you flip the black tab locking mechanism down and the white line to the black tab is flush. That white line should be flush right up against that black tab locking mechanism. At this point, stop. Put your red flag up. One of us will come around, verify that you got your screws in, verify that you have your ribbon cable inserted properly, and check you off before you proceed. After you've been checked off with your cable and screw assembly, you're now going to lift up the keyboard and make sure that the lower tabs are inserted first into the chassis. Then you're going to go ahead and gently drop the keyboard down and either use your finger or the pry tool and press down on the upper part of the keyboard until all 5 tabs in the upper part of the keyboard are snapped into place. Okay, now we're ready to reassemble the optical drive into the unit. So you'll want to close your monitor lid, flip the unit upside down, grab your optical drive, make sure that the stickers for the optical drive are facing down away from you and that the angled part of the optical drive chassis is towards the battery compartment. Go ahead and slide your optical drive unit into place. Alright, now we're ready to insert the small screw that secures the optical drive to the unit. Take great care in making sure you don't drop it as you transport it to the chassis. Screw it into the chassis. Okay, the last part of the reassembly is to insert the battery back into the unit. So you'll place that in, just let it flip down and press it into place. Now go ahead and flip the unit over and open it up. You'll want to power on your unit and you'll be double checking that you've got your RAM inserted and it's reflected in the system information window. We'll come around and do a final inspection of your reassembly and that your RAM has been properly inserted. Good job!